can get set up here. So why don't you go ahead and get set up? Okay. Sorry, we ran out of dongles. Do we have the one here? Okay. So for those of you who don't know, Web Platform Docs is a documentation site for web documentation, specifically client-side developer documentation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the thing that you should take away is that it is community-oriented and it's community-run. It's a wiki. It's something that we're hoping that all of you at some point will contribute to, and we hope that all of you will be able to use it. So, are we good? We're almost good. One of the main issues that we've all run into, I certainly personally have run into it as a developer, is that there's a lot of documentation out there. There's a lot of documentation on the web, and it's not always open documentation. It's not always editable. It's not always accurate or up to date. There's a lot of fantastic documentation out there that just hasn't been updated in a long time because the awesome person behind it moved on and is doing something else awesome. So sometimes there's only certain parts of what you need. There's tutorials, but there's not the reference materials. There's examples, but there's no way to ask people questions. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to solve with this. Oftentimes there's not a difference between beginners and experts, or there's not a good entry point for your level of expertise, and that's also something we're trying to address. So a lot of the times, there's a lot of great documentation out there, but it might be vendor specific or it might be vendor branded, and that can be sort of a problem for making sure that you can trust the information in some sense. Most of the documentation things aren't reusable. Are we not? Can you try to mirror the displays?
It's not detecting the display.
It's not the display. This is a great start to a tech conference, isn't it?
There you go.
And a sigh of relief. So from W3C's perspective, one of the things that was missing with this documentation a lot of the times, we'd love for you to read our technical specifications, but you don't want to read our technical specifications. But we do want to get your feedback, and we do want to tie this back into standards. So we do want you to find out early about things that are in the pipeline that can come back, and you can actually give us feedback. Hey, really like this feature, but this thing doesn't really fit many of the use cases that I have. And that kind of information is really valuable to have for us as standards developers, so that we can make sure that we're making sure the platform, the open web platform, is meeting your needs. One of the other main problems is that all of these different documentation sites, you have to go to all these different sites. So go ahead and it's too much information scattered all over too many places. So several companies, Adobe, Apple, Facebook, Google, HP, Intel, there's a list. Microsoft, Mozilla, Nokia, Opera, and W3C got together and we said, hey, why don't we all team up? Why don't we join our efforts instead of dividing them? And so that's what webplatform.org is. And so all of those all those stewards, we're calling them, are giving us seed content from their various, different sites. And go ahead. But we're putting all of that now under an open license. It's under a CC BY, so Creative Commons Attribution License. And when we say open, we mean open in a couple of ways. We mean, first, it's wiki-based. Anything that gets put up there, you guys can edit. You guys are experts. Well, no, you're not experts. You're all medium, but you probably know something. So, and you out there on the TV, you might be experts. So we really want this to be something that's driven by the community. we're in alpha phase right now. We're still getting it set up. We're creating this thing in the open, but we're really close to having it so that we want lots of people to come in and edit. And you're welcome. In fact, we really want you to come and kick the tires and make sure that it works for you as an editing experience. And so you can review, you can do other things, you can give us code for examples or even features of the site. And you can also become a leader in this. You can be you can help lead a translation team. You can help be the lead on a particular topic that you're really passionate about. And anyone can reuse this content. It's CC BY. Of course, obviously we want attribution, and we want attribution so that the people who have made the site, which is you, also get recognition. But we want to make sure that people know that webplatform.org is the definitive source for this information. So we want this information to spread out and be used by APIs, by other sites, by whoever needs to use it for whatever purpose. So Janet is going to take you on a little tour.
Is this one on? Okay, good. More or less. Okay. I just want to be able to talk and drive at the same time. Great. Okay. So if you go to www.webplatform.org, you get to our nice landing page, which has a nice little video that kind of explains why this happened and so on, which is more or less the spiel that Doug just gave you. The interesting part of the site is the docs area. There is this banner that warns you that's in alpha. A lot of the content is still rough, still not fully integrated, so we have that warning for you, but that means there's a huge opportunity for you to contribute. You can see kind of some of the general areas that we've laid out for both content and types of information. So a couple of areas that I'll highlight right now are web APIs. This is an area where web APIs tend to be still evolving, very fast-moving, not necessarily a lot of documentation elsewhere. And so we want to provide information to web developers so that they can test things out, experiment with it. This also, getting information about the web APIs out also enables feedback to the working groups to help improve them. One API that is maybe a little bit more stable, it's been around for a while, is Canvas, but this gives you this page gives you an idea of the types of information that we can have. So we can have reference information about the API objects, but then also links to tutorial content so that you can get an overview to enable you to put the reference content into context. An API that is much newer, again, not a lot of implementations, but a couple, is WebRTC, and here we have documentation of the objects and some general high-level concept stuff, but not that overview content as much. The overview and tutorial content actually often has to be written last because that's the most difficult to update if the definition of the API changes. Whereas for the reference content, well, you just go in and update the particular objects and so on. But if something changes in a tutorial, it can affect a lot of different things. So that tends to be written last. Another area that we're really focusing on, and when we have this flag that says that we're in alpha, we're actually trying to take the content out of alpha topic area by topic area. And so web APIs and CSS properties are two areas that we're focusing on first, just because we have to start somewhere. And CSS in particular, we've had some interest from tool vendors in actually using the content on the site in tools. So that's a motivation to actually get that area finished out. The CSS properties overview page has a listing of all of the CSS properties. This one happens to have a bunch of Microsoft-specific stuff that was imported from MSDN, but also, lots of CSS properties that you know and love. And we're working on getting all of these property pages completely fleshed out and standardized and so on. So the font size page gives you an idea of the kind of structure that we're using, and we're, in addition to using MediaWiki as our platform, we're using Semantic MediaWiki and Semantic Forms to structure the information so that it's standardized across pages, and because it's structured in that way, it can be used programmatically. And so we have an overview, syntax, value definitions and examples, and then you get into more text about actually how to use it, links to specifications and compatibility information, which we'll talk about more in a little bit later on.
And there's one thing I wanted to mention about the related specifications. This is where if you're reading up on something, especially something new, and either you find the feature confusing or you find that it doesn't meet your use cases, this is a great place for you to find out how to give feedback to W3C to make sure that we can address those use cases.
And I just want to show you an example of what the edit interface looks like. Because we're using Semantic MediaWiki and Semantic Forms, the editing interface is actually quite structured. And all of the values have specific fields and so on. So within that, there's MediaWiki markup, but what is presented to an editor is this structured interface. For types of articles that are more free-form, like tutorials, you'd basically just get a big edit box with a bunch of text with MediaWiki markup in it, because it doesn't have to follow quite as rigid a structure. And then one final, I didn't load the page. One thing I just want to additionally point out is we have a getting started guide, so to help you understand how to contribute, what needs to be done, tips and so on. We have different ways to contribute broken down into 5-minute tasks, half-hour tasks, and half-day tasks. Those are approximations, of course, but if you have a little bit of time, there's some quick things you can do. If you have a little bit more time, there's some larger things to do. One way that we haven't broken this down that we really need to is categorizing these tasks by writing and editorial type things and coding type things. So if you're more interested in writing code than in writing text, you can help us with writing example code, or you can actually help us with the infrastructure of the site, which is all up on GitHub. So that's, I believe, it for the tour. This is a community site. And all the work on it is done basically in public through a mailing list, an IRC channel. We have conference calls to go over things that need to be done, who's doing what, and so on, approximately weekly. We have doc sprints, about which we'll talk more in just a minute. And we have a bug tracker. Currently, we're using the W3C Bugzilla, but we're working on getting another system set up that we hope will be more well-suited to documentation types of tasks. And you want to talk about the future?
Sure. So we obviously already have a lot of plans for this site. I'm going to show you, Apple. I use a Mac, and yet I'm still...
You made me turn the navigation toolbar off.
That's okay. So, let's see. So we're going to go to code.webplatform.org. Who here is familiar with Leah Verou's Dablet? Yeah, okay. So Leah, of course, is working on an integration. She's working for W3C with our developer relations, and she's working on an integration. And so I'm not sure. Okay. So, there we are. So, you know what? I'm not going to embarrass myself further by not being able to demonstrate it. However, if you go to code.webplatform.org, you can see some fabulous features that Leah has put into our code previewer. And not sure why this isn't working, but it's really fabulous. It's basically a JS Fiddle type thing, similar to CodePen, JS Fiddle, a lot of other sites like this. And but we're going to be using it specifically to integrate live examples into our reference pages and tutorials. And so then let's go back to the presentation. So next we're going to talk a little bit about compatibility tables. Who here knows what a compatibility table is? Okay, so compatibility table is, does this work in my browser? Does this work in, this is actually a long-standing problem. You want to know, sometimes before you even read up on a feature, you want to know, does this work across browsers? How well does it work across browsers? Does this work across mobile browsers? What platforms does this have problems on? So there have been a lot of efforts to do things like this. CanIUse.com, Alexis DeVary is going to be talking about that later. Quirks mode from PPK. W3C's test suites actually have a lot of this information about whether something works or not in various browsers. And of course, the Test the Web Forward effort by Adobe is also trying to get you guys to come help make sure that these tests exist. So we really want to have data-driven information about this. We don't want to update this information by hand, because that goes out of date way too quickly, and it doesn't really scale. So we're going to be integrating the data from CanIUse, from Quirks Mode, et cetera, with their permission, obviously, into webplatform.org. And probably in the next month or so, we're going to get the prototype of this integration working, so that you can find out data-driven, like real-world test case-based information on whether that feature works for you, and that's going to be integrated right into webplatform.org. And so if this intrigued you, or you want to contribute, please come by our doc sprint. You can always edit the site, but we have these doc sprints, which are actual physical events that you can come by, and we can, there's Saturday, the day after this conference, it's going to be at Adobe. If you want to find out more about it, if you go into the parlor, which is that little area over there, you can get a free sticker for webplatform.org and find out more about the doc sprint. And because this is a community-oriented effort, I also want to talk a little bit about Test the Web Forward. Test the Web Forward, who here has heard of it, Test the Web Forward? Okay, just a few. Who has participated? So these are actually really fun events where you can find out, Adobe has been putting these on, and I think others are playing them as well. You can come and you can help make the tests. And you don't think about this as helping other people. Think about this as helping future you, so that next time you have a problem or a potential problem, if you can identify problems early on, we can get them into the test suites. We can get the browsers to recognize this is a problem. Think of it as filing a bug on the browser, but for all browsers. So it's community-driven crowdsourcing for these tests. There were 3 events in 2012. We're going to have more in 2013. And this means that you're going to have more consistency between browsers. And so if all of us pitch in together, we can have great documentation. We can have great interoperability between implementations that's driven by tests. And this feeds back into the compatibility table. So if we have a test for a particular feature, you know that when you go to that feature in webplatform.org, you're going to see it, and your test is going to be part of that data that goes into telling people whether or not this feature works in a browser. I just want to thank everybody for, that's the end of this. We're going to give you guys a nice long break for the first part, but I want to thank Janet Swisher for doing this, and we're open to questions.
Hi. I think this thing is really awesome, really clean, and to that point, this might be a bit out of the scope of what you're doing, but within companies, technical documentation is usually crude, rude, and barely usable. And so I'm wondering, I know you said you use MediaWiki, but I love how it's laid out, the UI, all that. Can that be downloaded as a boilerplate for internal documentation for companies?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. We haven't prepared anything like that, but we are going to put all of our code up on GitHub. So it's weird because there's MediaWiki, right? And everything on this site, by the way, is based on open source. So there's MediaWiki, and you can always contribute to MediaWiki. And we can put the technical specifications for the templates and everything else like that onto GitHub. It might take, it's not our primary effort, but yeah. So we will be making all that code available. So in addition to the content, all the code that we build for the site is also open source, and it's also going to be contributed. So I guess the answer is yes, just not right now. Any other questions? Okay. So just a few, first off, thank Janet Swisher. And so I just wanted a few more closing notes to this whole introduction. There is a lot of Wi-Fi, but please don't watch the video stream of this conference if you're in this room. If you're out there, watch the video stream, but you guys, please don't. We deliberately separated the pages so that the conference page does, so you can look at the schedule without bringing down the video. For another kind of streaming, the restrooms are, the men's restroom is over there, and the women's restroom is outside is through the parlor. So the meals are going to be also, I believe the meals are going to be, the meals are going to be inside here. I think you're going to go out and get them right there. And we'll have more to say about that in a few minutes. But for now, if you have questions, please let us know. If you're interested in the doc sprint, please go into the parlor, get some free stickers. And thank you very much, and we'll see you again in a few minutes.